It is a popular opinion that Monster Hunter 4 is the best Monster Hunter title. I find myself agreeing with this more and more every day. However, the opinion alone carries little weight in the overall discussion of the Monster Hunter franchise. It is impossible for me to prove that Monster Hunter 4 is the best Monster Hunter game, nor would it be correct for me to state that it is objectively the best title in the series, because that's impossible to decide. Instead, I want to answer the question, what makes fans think Monster Hunter 4 is the best in the series? Why do so many fans consider Monster Hunter 4 to be the best in the series? And I believe I have a strong answer for this question. The reason Monster Hunter 4 is considered the best is because Monster Hunter 4 is the perfection of Monster Hunter Portable, in that it is the current best delivery of the mission-based gameplay loop that Monster Hunter Portable established. Furthermore, Monster Hunter 4 indulges in the mission-based gameplay of the Monster Hunter Portable genre, and, in my opinion, is still the most successful at presenting this format in an engaging narrative. So what is this Monster Hunter Portable genre I speak of? Well, I made a 3-hour video on this. It's my Monster Hunter 2 video that was kind of infamous. The video focused on Monster Hunter 2 and the many gameplay loops that this series introduced in the early titles, and how those gameplay loops were later abandoned in the later titles. I made an effort to describe the genre of Monster Hunter and how it had shifted as the series evolved. This snowballed into a number of discussions that complemented the already growing discussion throughout the community, basically that players all around miss old Monster Hunter, and that the older titles offered something that World and Rise currently do not offer. This Monster Hunter 4 video is a sequel of sorts to the Monster Hunter 2 video. I'm considering this something of a merged retrospective review video essay. I'll be dissecting the particulars about Monster Hunter 4 that sets it apart from other titles in the Monster Hunter franchise. Unlike the Monster Hunter 2 video, I'm not going to explain each and every design feature of Monster Hunter 4. I'll be talking about a lot, but not everything. Hence why this video is significantly shorter than the previous one. There's several other videos on YouTube already which already catalog the many design features of Monster Hunter 4, and also just acquiring and playing Monster Hunter 4 is significantly easier than Monster Hunter 2, and more players have actually played Monster Hunter 4, so I feel like a lot of the things that people know Monster Hunter 4 should already just be known by the community. I don't want to have to bore you guys with stuff you already know. Back to the crux of this video, can I actually prove that Monster Hunter 4 is the perfection of the Monster Hunter Portable genre, or the Monster Hunter Portable format? No, that's impossible for me to come to an objective answer for. I can only interpret my evidence objectively to the best of my ability and deliver an analysis I can consider meaningful. If you're not familiar with my videos and you already feel lost, well, you gotta just strap yourself in, because it's not gonna get any simpler. This is just what Jacob Monster Hunter is like, alright? I have what I consider very radical thoughts to discuss, and I may come to some conclusions that you may not agree with. Overall, the goal of my channel is to extract meaning from Monster Hunter. You know, what is Monster Hunter really about? What are they trying to present to us? As such, what I value in the Monster Hunter series will be fundamentally different than most other players. I do not actually want anyone to take my opinions and interpretations and repeat them without the proper context. Actually, I'd prefer if everyone forms their own opinions based on the games themselves. These radical interpretations have very little weight in how the Monster Hunter series is developed anyway. Most of my gripes of the series, as well as my praises towards the series, will never be addressed by Capcom, and they'll never make the most ideal Monster Hunter for me. Still, I think that it's important for me to share these thoughts, for my own sake and also just for the overall community discussion. So yeah, this video is about Monster Hunter 4, and I'll be talking about Monster Hunter 4 and my thoughts on Monster Hunter 4 throughout this video. And I guess to clarify, anytime I mention Monster Hunter 4, I'm referring to both the base game and the expansion as a package. So when I say Monster Hunter 4, I'm referring to Monster Hunter 4, as well as 4G and 4 Ultimate. 4G and 4 Ultimate are the same game, with some slight different... whatever. Monster Hunter 4. Let's start. Before I discuss Monster Hunter 4 proper, I need to debrief and follow up on the discussion of Monster Hunter's genre from the last video. My Monster Hunter 2 video unfortunately created a narrative that the Monster Hunter Portable genre, as it is now, how Monster Hunter is now, was quote-unquote bad. At least that's how a lot of people interpreted my video. And that my video also stated that the old original genre found in Monster Hunter 1 and 2 was superior, which none of that was intended. Rather, I wanted to shed light on the design philosophies that Capcom, invented for Monster Hunter 1 and 2, but then later abandoned down the line in their pursuit of perfecting the most profitable game, the most profitable genre. Once Monster Hunter was perfected, in my opinion, in Monster Hunter 4, Capcom was now free to experiment with the systems that they created and see what new directions they could take it, which spawned World and Rise. Both of these games, World and Rise, deserve their own analysis as well. So back to genre. The discussions regarding genre have given us some conclusions. The most prevalent conclusion being a better description of Monster Hunter 2 and Monster Hunter 2's genre. Grouping Monster Hunter 2 alongside Monster Hunter 1 was incorrect. More correctly, Monster Hunter 2 should simply be considered a black sheep in the series overall. Another conclusion I came to was splitting the games into two separate camps is just too binary, and rather it should be presented in a spectrum, as each title has a plethora of individual design choices that could be used to argue that specific game could be any number of its own genres or whatever. Any game could be considered its own genre. Monster Hunter 3 could be the Monster Hunter 3 genre, I've built an inherently subjective graph here, which I think better illustrates what I was trying to get at, and it's a spectrum now. I'm going to explain how it works, but feel free to reposition the titles up and down however you like, just argue in the comments, do what you want. But I do feel this graph better represents the shifting baseline of what Monster Hunter genre is. The original Monster Hunter serves as the baseline, and I consider that 0. 0 is Monster Hunter. From there, we can go up or down and place each game title on this graph based on how it differs from the original Monster Hunter in its gameplay loop. So any games placed at 0 has a very similar gameplay loop as Monster Hunter 1, where the player prepares and plans for monster hunting, and that's the gameplay loop. If the game is placed higher than 0, then we consider it a more portable game, a game more like Monster Hunter Rise. These titles focus more on streamlining the preparation aspect to make the combat of monster hunting the primary focus. So they're streamlining preparation, they're making the game mostly about monster hunting. But if the game is placed lower than 0, then we consider it more like Monster Hunter 2, which is a game that refuses to streamline. Instead, it complicates your actions, and the consequences of that pushes the player to focus more heavily on preparation and study. And I'm looking at this graph now, and I already feel like it's probably inaccurate. Like, maybe I'd probably move Monster Hunter Cross down. I don't really know. I think that this does still better represent the shifting baseline of Monster Hunter. The Monster Hunter 2 video aimed to prove that Monster Hunter 2's genre is clearly different from the overarching Monster Hunter genre. Time has passed, and I've read the responses, and I'm changing my own interpretation and definition of these two separate genres. I believe I have a more clear definition of what these two separate genres are now, and I'll clarify them as such here. There is the Monster Hunter survival genre, which is the survival hunting and gathering village simulation fantasy game. And there's also the Monster Hunter portable genre, which is mission-based fantasy hunting simulation game. And I believe these definitions are a bit better now. Also, to quickly recap, I discussed in the previous video that the newer titles all follow the Monster Hunter portable genre at their core. In other words, even though titles such as Monster Hunter 3G and Monster Hunter 4G are not considered part of the portable series of Monster Hunter titles, they still follow the Monster Hunter portable formula. Furthermore, despite Monster Hunter World introducing many elements that would be perfect, wonderful for a survival-focused Monster Hunter game, it is ultimately overshadowed by the more pressing genre of the mission-based hunting. It is important while watching this video that the viewer understands that from my point of view, Monster Hunter 4 should be considered a Monster Hunter portable game in genre. That's basically why I said all this. Furthermore, this video will elaborate on how Monster Hunter 4 handled the Monster Hunter portable genre, because I feel that it handled it very well. Obviously, as I've said many times, this is a discussion void of objective truth. It is impossible to fully answer these questions. However, I believe, like Monster Hunter 2, there are incredibly valuable game design choices that Capcom made to Monster Hunter 4 that generated a unique experience. Those valuable game design choices should be celebrated and explored like I did for my Monster Hunter 2 video. Thus, I'm going to be doing the same here. I'm going to celebrate and explore Monster Hunter 4's game design and provide meaning to it all in the end. Ultimately, the thesis and the too long didn't read of this video is such. Monster Hunter 4's newly integrated systems, coupled with how player progression works, elevates both the narrative and player experience above other titles in the genre. Namely, the title successfully suspends disbelief while justifying and encouraging the mission-based gameplay of the Monster Hunter portable genre. This is a very imaginative analysis. Ideally, I would encourage people smarter than me to use my analysis as a springboard for further, stronger analysis. My statements are not the end of this discussion because they are a subjective answer to an impossible question. I found that if I don't repeat myself, then my statements sometimes get misinterpreted or misunderstood. Ideally, I want someone to be able to watch this once and fully understand the analysis I'm providing. Finally, it is important to note that these discussions are about which game is quote-unquote best, and they are subjective. I am not arguing that Monster Hunter 4 is the best game in the franchise. I'm actually arguing an opinion that maybe Monster Hunter 4 handled the portable genre in a different, possibly better way than other titles. But this does not and should not affect the overall rank or placement of this game above or below any other Monster Hunter title. Now you know you're in a Jacob Monster Hunter video. I hope you're able to follow all the nonsense I just said. I'm about to start actually talking about Monster Hunter 4 now. Let's actually begin.
No. I thought I was fine, but I didn't.
Monster Hunter 4 released on September 14th, 2013 in Japan only. It's important to note that Monster Hunter 3G released on September 10th, 2011, so 2 years before. To put that in perspective, Monster Hunter 4 was released 2 full years after the last Monster Hunter title. If development for Monster Hunter 4 started the moment the original Monster Hunter 3 Try released on August 1st, 2009, that means that Monster Hunter 4 had just over 5 years of development time in total. In comparison, Monster Hunter 3 Try had 3 years of development time, and Monster Hunter World also had 5 years of development time. 1 year later, on October 11th, 2014, the expansion for Monster Hunter 4, Monster Hunter 4G, released, and about 6 months later, the title was finally released in the West as Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate on February 13th, 2015. The title was only ever released on the 3DS, and like Monster Hunter 3G, in my opinion, it really pushed the limits of what the 3DS was capable of. It showcased the true power of the handheld console. Most importantly, the console allowed for playing online through the internet wirelessly through Wi-Fi. It should be noted that this was the first time a portable Monster Hunter title was capable of true Wi-Fi play. Monster Hunter 4 was a title designed for a portable console, although it was not actually considered part of the Monster Hunter portable lineage of games. And to recap, up until this point, there was certainly a distinction between the two series of games. Monster Hunter 1, 2, and 3 were all on home console. There was an offline village with a narrative including cutscenes and events. There was also a separate online town without any real narrative, but did feature server-wide real-time events. Monster Hunter Portable 1, 2, and 3 were all on the portable console. There was only an offline village. However, the means to link up and play with other players was available at this offline village through a gathering hall. There was no server the player could join, thus there was no server-wide events. Monster Hunter 3G opted for the 3DS release, a portable release as well. To compensate, as we all know, they removed Loch Lac, the online town in Monster Hunter 3, and they replaced it with Port Tanzia, which was the Gathering Hall equivalent, which we would normally see in a Monster Hunter portable game. Monster Hunter 4 follows this same formula, leaving it in a strange limbo of whether or not it should be considered a Monster Hunter portable game in terms of how the content works. I throw the name portable around a lot, so I need to break this down again. I think Monster Hunter Portable actually has 3 separate definitions, and I'm using 3 separate definitions constantly throughout this video. 1, there is the Monster Hunter Portable genre, which is a game that, abandons the hunting survival aspects of the game and streamlines, so it's mostly focused on the boss fights. There's the Monster Hunter Portable series, which is the series of games, as I said before, 1, 2, and 3, Portable 1, 2, and 3, which was a series of games developed by a team at Capcom that is separate from the main Monster Hunter team. Then there's also the Monster Hunter Portable handheld experience, which is just any Monster Hunter title that is on a portable console, and you have to actually play it handheld. You have to actually play it on a portable console. We know the reason Capcom switched focus to the 3DS was entirely because the sales on the portable consoles was always higher. In Japan, their primary demographic is kids, teenagers, and young adults that play games on the go during their busy lives. I'm sure the 3DS seemed more powerful than the PSP at the time, I don't know. Maybe there was some kind of deal between Capcom and Nintendo that prevented Capcom from going to the PS Vita. I don't know, it's all just speculation. But regardless, they went to the 3DS. When Monster Hunter 4 was announced and subsequently released, I theorized that the Monster Hunter team and the Monster Hunter Portable team had kind of fused together into one singular team, and they were focused entirely on producing titles for portable consoles only moving forward. And I wasn't entirely wrong. They have kind of merged, but we do know from, behind the scenes documents that, they still do make two separate games back to back. I can't shake the feeling that Monster Hunter 4 was likely developed from the get-go to mimic the Monster Hunter Portable experience. It was just designed from the get-go. They knew the next game had to be another portable game. It couldn't be a game like Monster Hunter Tri. And during these times, which to me felt like very strange times, fans of games like Monster Hunter Tri, the original Monster Hunter Tri, they knew that they would never get their sequel. They'd never get a home console sequel. The portable games completely overtook the mainline, and the new mainline was now a portable game. And because it was now a portable game, all of the caveats of being a portable game came with it. The return of palicos are almost exactly as they were in Portable Third, with some slight changes. The Gathering Hall system returned almost exactly the same as it was on portable consoles like Portable Third. There were no longer dedicated servers with scheduled event quest cycles. This is just to name a few of the changes that were made to integrate Monster Hunter 4 into the portable genre. The most discussed change from Monster Hunter 3 into Monster Hunter 4 was the removal of the underwater combat. Many consider that the underwater combat was spiritually replaced with Monster Hunter 4's overhaul and vertical movement. Previously, when the player approached and fell off a ledge on the map, the hunter character would lock into a falling animation and stumble upon landing. The player was incapable of manipulating the hunter character as they fell. But now in Monster Hunter 4, the player is granted full manipulation of the character as they fall. The rest is history, and modern titles continue to expand on vertical movement. To complement this new freedom of movement, Monster Hunter 4's hunting locations have varied terrain elevation. In the past, the player would primarily move horizontally. Attempting to move vertically through climbing was slow. It was, more believable, if one compared the climbing in-game to mountain climbing in our reality. But overall, many players dislike slow climbing, as far as I know. Now in Monster Hunter 4, the player would be moving equally horizontally and vertically at a relatively equal pace for both. The increase of varied elevation and the introduction of small ledges scattered throughout the map were designed to be used for jumping attacks. The player could not jump on their own, the player needed the physical elevation to perform a jumping attack. Throughout the franchise, it was made clear that the player's equipment was relatively heavy. Manually jumping on flat ground would theoretically be ineffective. After all, the goal of using jumping attacks was to attach the hunter character to the back of the attacking monster in a new process we called mounting, the mounting system. And if the monster is much taller than the player, the player would require the extra height in order to compensate the difference in the height between the hunter and the monster. Overall, vertical control in attacks is a fundamental change that remixed the entire combat of Monster Hunter up until that point. Unlike underwater combat, which was sort of a separate style of play for dedicated locations on the hunting maps, vertical combat was integrated into regular hunting at all times, as long as there was a ledge nearby. My opinion on it is that I think it was a positive change. I believe that using the height difference and the weight of the player weapon, mounting is, to me, a logical conclusion. While movement was technically less restricted than the older titles, it all fell in line with the gameplay that was presented before. In other words, I liked how it still had weight to it. There was still a believability to it. Monster mounting was handled through a minigame, as you all know, and you press the button and you gotta brace when the monster's flailing around. And then when you complete the minigame, the monster would stagger over. And there's lots of mixed feelings in the community about whether or not this is balanced. I know I'm not alone in having mixed feelings on the abundance of ledges in each map. In previous titles, the border walls within the different numbered zones on the hunting maps were the only physical boundaries. And what I mean is, the hunt consisted of what was essentially a large, flat room, and if you're playing well, you know not to allow yourself to get cornered or stuck against a wall or the border of the map. With Monster Hunter 4's usage of varied terrain, suddenly there were more physical boundaries cutting across the map. We don't really view a cliff as a wall, because from the overhead view, it is a cliff you can climb on the map. However, in practice, all that was added was more walls throughout the different zones, and thus there was a higher chance of being cornered or tripped. Furthermore, sometimes the AI for the monsters did not always respond well to the changes in altitude, causing complications and delays in the hunt. This is a case-by-case basis, but it is worth noting. There are times where, due to the difference in height, the different altitudes almost acted as separate hunting zones altogether. The player could temporarily escape the monster's attacks by changing altitude. equivalent to moving between numbered zones. It's strange, viewing this as both a video game and a virtual experience, there are times where the ledges benefit the player in escape, or they may create more believable or immersive experience that is less restricted compared to the walls in previous titles. But there's also times where the ledges are a nuisance to the player, and they act as unnatural boundaries, revealing the limitations of Monster Hunter only to be a video game again. Similarly, ledges can be abused to ensure mounting damage to guarantee a mount, which kills that immersive aspect, only bringing further light to this experience being just, a video game. Moving on, I wanted to very briefly mention that Monster Hunter 4, of course, introduced the Charge Blade and Insect Glaive, which are both highly specialized weapons with intricate base designs. They are similar to the Gun Lance and Switch Axe in their complexity. The Insect Glaive actually was a weapon type first pitched for Monster Hunter 1, and there is a lot of concept art for a staff that commands insects. You can look into this. The Charge Blade uses similar moves to the Switch Axe, but ultimately performs quite differently overall. These rather specialized weapons feed into one of Monster Hunter 4's main aesthetics, which is the specialization of hunters. I'll discuss this further later in the video. All of the other weapon types returned, of course, and they all receive various changes in movements, combos, and balance that I'm not going to list because it would take forever and I'm bound to miss something, but overall the controls for hunting combat were all adjusted for the new vertical movement systems. Moving out of the discussion of the hunting combat and back into the discussion of the portable titles, like Monster Hunter Portable 3rd, the player now has access to an item box next to the village exit, which we actually did not have this in Monster Hunter 3. Thus, the player must no longer return to the hunter character's house to manage items. I discussed the placement of item boxes in great detail in the Monster Hunter 2 video, so I'm not going to repeat myself here. Because this title was designed to be a portable game and not a survival simulation game, they granted the player quick and easy access to the items before embarking on a quest mission. Also introduced in Monster Hunter 4 was item loadouts, which function similarly to saved equipment sets, but now they are saved item sets to assist in streamlining the gameplay loop. And see, unlike my Monster Hunter 2 video where I'm discussing content that likely players have never experienced before, in this video I'm explaining concepts that I know you all probably know very well. But anyway, Monster Hunter 4 also had a simpler system for farming consumable items, a subject I also covered in my Monster Hunter 2 video. Monster Hunter 4 brought back the field pouch from Monster Hunter Portable 3rd. Other carryovers from Monster Hunter Portable 3rd include the long barbecue spit minigame, as well as the Palico recruitment, management, equipment, and their dedicated assistance on hunts. Monster Hunter 4's narrative tasked the player to travel to many different villages, which amounted to many more locations compared to other titles. I can recall Monster Hunter 2 having 3 locations, 2 villages and Dondorma City. However, Monster Hunter 4 has 4 villages and Dondorma City. Monster Hunter 4 removed day and night cycles entirely, much to my displeasure. However, Monster Hunter 4 does not require day and night cycles for its narrative or its themes, and I'll expand on this later. Monster Hunter 4 does have an alternative version of the Dunes map, which is supposed to be the dunes at night, but I do not count that as a true day cycle, as the game regards it as a separate map altogether rather than a map during a different time of the day. The player actually unlocks the dunes at night at a whole different rank after the introduction of dunes during the day. And the dunes during the night actually has different items and monsters. It's used as a set piece for a narrative rather than any sort of immersive simulation experience like you would find in Monster Hunter 2 or even Monster Hunter 3. Finally, another massive change was the overhaul on free hunting mechanics from Monster Hunter 3. Free hunting in Moga Woods in Monster Hunter 3 fulfilled the game's narrative of the village's dependence on the hunter, the player. By hunting in the woods next to the village, for the village returns the favor by providing the player specific goods in exchange for the hunting that the player had done. It was a mutual and beneficial exchange of goods and services based on each other's main trade or skill set. The hunter hunts, the farmers farm, the fishers fish, and so on. This generates and supports the overall game's message and theme, and all is right with the world. So what does Monster Hunter 4 do instead? Well, instead the free hunting was built around exploring a location known as the Everwood. It's a favorite map of mine. Within the Everwood, the player would face randomized layouts where every trip was different and new. It was a vast sea of mysterious ruins and massive trees. The monster encounters would be entirely random as well, and at times rare monsters including elder dragons would appear. Unlike Moga Woods being tied to Moga Village, the Everwood was tied to the guild itself. The Everwood is an incredibly dangerous and difficult to navigate location, and if any hunter were to enter and come back with any important findings on monster behavior or ancient relics, the guild would compensate that brave hunter and then enlist further expeditions based off their findings. So where Monster Hunter 3 is about the dependency between village and hunter, Monster Hunter 4 is about braving the unknown and embarking on special operations. The crux of this video is to highlight the focus Monster Hunter 4 has on making the quest's actual special operations, beyond just hunting an animal, as it was done in previous titles. In previous mainline Monster Hunter games, the player was primarily assisted in protecting a village or accepting bounty quests to hunt monsters in the wilderness. The previous mainline games, 1, 2, and 3, pushed to improve the connection between the player and the village they were tasked to protect, whether it be through subtext, cutscenes, dialogue, or that deeper, immersive simulation aspect I talked for 3 hours about in the Monster Hunter 2 video. These titles were on console, and the team at Capcom were able to focus on this aspect. The story, the narrative, and the themes were delivered to the player slowly throughout the overall experience of the game. Meanwhile, the sales and reputation of the Portable series proved that many players simply don't care for those immersive simulative aspects. They just want the fun, fast-paced action combat, the mission-based bounty hunting gameplay loop. This style of play functions much better on a portable console. Theoretically, the busy player only has 10 minutes in between his classes or on a train ride. So would they rather hunt a monster or gather items? They're going to want to hunt the monster. The only downside is the overall experience of the game restricts itself to being just a game, and for players who want that overall narrative delivered to them, it tends to be missing in the Portable series, Portable 1, 2, and 3. I theorized that the mainline Monster Hunter team approached this game knowing they'd be essentially making Monster Hunter Portable 4th, and would need to fulfill the quota set by Monster Hunter Portable 3rd. However, instead of taking the easier development path like Monster Hunter Cross eventually did, they reapproached the narrative and themes they established for Monster Hunter, and they also reapproached how they operated, based on the past 3 games. They couldn't do the Village Hunter immersive story again, and they wouldn't settle on a game that has no story like Portable 3rd or Portable 2nd. So how do you spin a game built around an endless grind into a meaningful narrative? How do you triumph and hit 2 birds with 1 stone? Monster Hunter 4 opens with the dramatic encounter of Darren Moran and introduces the player to the Caravaneer. Where previous titles would have the player meet their employer safely in the village they are protecting, Monster Hunter 4 has the player meet the employer on the job, the most dangerous job. A siege fight, actually. The game immediately sets the player up for the rest of the game's experiences, which is to expect the unexpected. This exciting opening acts as a tutorial on basic actions, and the player manages to successfully repel an attacking Elder Dragon before they've actually even accepted their first quest. They've already taken down an Elder Dragon, or at least repelled it. The rest of the game's tutorial is explained as the player continues, of course, but in a much faster and much more well-integrated way compared to previous titles in the series. Not to mention it tends to be a far bit more dramatic. Once the player has settled in Valhabar, they learn that they are not employed by any village, but rather a traveling caravan, just a guy and his friends. From there, the player has the choice to undertake the Caravaneer's job proposal and, assist him on his adventures, or he could just walk over to the guild hall, the gathering hall nearby, and just, take on the quests that are there, as you would in previous titles. Now, once again, the crux of my video, Monster Hunter 4's quests are not the same as previous titles. Sure, on surface level, they look the same. Many of the quests are just hunt one large monster. However, more often than not, the quests are a bit more specialized than that. The game's narrative eventually tangles the caravan and the player character into the hunting guild's troubles. Due to the competence of the player character, the caravan is requested to assist in a special secret operation involving the emergence of Gore Magala, which is a mysterious monster that serves as the game's flagship fight. Here's a good example of kind of how the game treats things differently. In Monster Hunter Portable 2nd, the player is tasked to save the village from an attacking Tigrex. You're told the Tigrex is dangerous and is attacking the village, despite that never actually being shown in-game. You just need to hunt the Tigrex. In Monster Hunter 4, the player is tasked to inspect a Tigrex. That's acting a little bit strange. Surprise! As it turns out, it has actually been infected by the Frenzy virus, which is caused by Gore Magala. This Tigrex is now way more dangerous and needs to be killed for the well-being of everyone and everything. The player is shown the effects of the virus, and ultimately the player is required to hunt the Tigrex. One experience is a simple issue that the hunter solves. The hunter protects the village. But Monster Hunter 4 takes that experience and makes it a complex issue, involving organizations, ecosystems, investigation, and mystery solving. One is just a simple bounty hunting mission, while the other one is a special operation. Many of the key quests in Monster Hunter 4, especially in high rank and G rank, feature frenzied monsters, monster subspecies, double monster quests, double frenzied monster quests, special siege fights. Actually, you should note the amount of special siege fights in this game. Cantori, Canlos, Darren Dalmadur, Gogmazios. There's lots of quests where you're actually saving the town Dondorma from an invading Elder Dragon, which was something that was actually in Monster Hunter 2, but it fits a bit better, I think, in this game. The quest where you're fighting an apex frenzied monster, it comes to mind. There's all those age text quests where the player must decipher ancient scrolls. There's even the episodic quests, the DLC ones, where characters would literally walk, like you would talk to characters, and the characters would send the player on secret operations to complete special objectives that are not normal objectives you would see in a normal Monster Hunter game. And all of this is just the Guildhall content. The offline narrative plunges the player into many unexpected twists and turns. The surprise encounter of Gore Magala out in the ocean, the escort mission with the Ace Hunters, the forced quest failure when he first meets Regios, the Rustica Shella Diora fight. Every time the player embarks on an expedition to the Everwood and slays a monster, the guild sets up further expeditions for the player to embark on to further solve the mystery of the Everwood and discover more. These expeditions come with their own surprises. The monster might end up being frenzied, or another monster might show up and attack. And that other monster also might be frenzied. Monster Hunter 4 is built in such a way where every quest, every moment, is full of changes and surprises. Everything is shifting while also focusing on being highly specialized. The hunter isn't just embarking on bounty hunting missions, they are special operations that only a trained hunter under the hunting guild can embark on. It doesn't even stop at the quests. The theme of specialization extends to the maps and the monsters. The new hunting locations introduced in Monster Hunter 4 are special. They actually are special. In the past, the hunting maps have always been vague, large biomes. The desert, the swamp, the jungle, the volcano, even in 3rd generation, the tundra, the flooded forest, it's just a rainforest, the sandy plains, just a desert, the volcano, again. In these older maps, there is a larger scale to these maps. In Monster Hunter 2, it is implied that the snowy mountains the player scales is the one in the distance. It's those mountains in the distance at the beginning of the map. And we don't really know which of the mountains you are scaling, it could be any of them, but regardless, the actual overall size is expressed here, and it's massive, it's vague. The Snowy Mountains, renamed the Arctic Ridge, is a massive region, and the implication was always that if Capcom had the resources, then likely the map would actually be sprawling and massive. The original Sandy Plains from Monster Hunter 3 shows the true scale of the map, where Monster Hunter Rise compressed and miniaturized it. Compare this to Monster Hunter 4, where the maps are way more specific with their names. The Ancestral Steppes' Japanese name is Ruins Plain, or Ruins Field, which I always preferred as a name because it describes this location more accurately. It is a field home to a set of ruins. What are those ruins? Who built them? By naming the location Ruins Field, we are describing it in relation to humanity. If it was just a field, the field would be vaguely anything. By adding ruins, we compress the grander, bigger territory into one singular location. Just the ruins in this one little area. The Everwood is another example. Even though it is a large biome, it has a very specific name and nature to it. It is the Everwood. It's a location that's been named by humans. It's not just a desert, you know? The Sunken Hollow is specifically the location of the mine the Trovarians of Hearth use. It is a specific location. It's a one single hole in the ground you explore, rather than a vague, large biome. As the narrative progresses, the Trovarians reopen the lava flows into the Sunken Hollow, and the map alters into the Volcanic Hollow. The player is then requested to later complete tasks in the volcanic version of the same location. Again, it's all about surprising and shaking up the gameplay and the norm. The Heavens Mount is a specific location of Cathar and the Sanctuary. As the player progresses through the narrative, the doorway to the Sanctuary is opened, when normally it is closed. Once again, there are ancient ruins here, marking it as a specific location of humanity. Even the tower returns in Monster Hunter 4, although in a very limited capacity. Still, it is another example of a location rather than a general biome. The tower is human-made after all. By repositioning the focus of the hunts from large biomes to a single hyper-specialized location, it reinforces the theme of each quest being a special operation or a special assignment. If the task was to hunt a Rathalos, anyone in the guild could go to the forest and hills. The area has tons of them for miles and miles. But if the player is being sent to specifically the Heavens Mount to hunt a Rathalos, and there must be a good reason for going there. I mean, the place is far more dangerous. The rocks are falling, the ground's unstable. The very terrain in these new locations transform what used to be mostly running from zone to zone into climbing, jumping, and traversing dangerous terrain. Sure, yeah, you are technically still moving from zone to zone, but Monster 4 is making an effort to spice up the travel and not make it just the same in every zone. Moving on to monsters, subspecies return in Monster 4, and they essentially replace the roster in high rank, something we saw in 3 Ultimate. Instead of hunting a regular Zynoger, the player must now hunt a Stygian Zynoger in high rank. And with nearly every monster having a subspecies, this keeps the experience continually new and interesting. You're always fighting something new, something's always changing. Meanwhile, the quests continue to throw strange and difficult challenges that go beyond a regular single monster hunt. Want to hunt a regular Zynoger? Well, too bad. The quest is now to hunt at least 2 of them. And then in G rank, we have examples like Fire Drill, where you have to hunt a Stygian Zynoger and a Brachydios at the same time. You want to hunt either of those on their own first? Too bad, you can't. You have to hunt them both in the same quest first in order to unlock their individual hunts later. On top of the Frenzy and Apex transformations the monsters receive during quests, a few of the new monsters have special dramatic transformations that they do during the hunt. Zamtrios has 3 separate forms, one with a very different moveset. Gormagala has a completely different moveset when he's all, powered up. Celtis Queen combines with Celtis and gains new abilities. Although this isn't technically new, older monsters like Nargacuga or Zynoger certainly had mid-fight transformations, the addition of new and interesting transformations in a lot of different monsters are very dramatic, and it helped uplift the DPS boss fight into having these, pseudo-narrative stages. The Gormagala gets stronger as the fight continues. Zamtrios changes forms to surprise the player. Monster 4 isn't interested in immersive hunting simulation. Rather, it's creating dramatic combat situations with narrative-like mid-combat shifts to keep the fight engaging. Deliberately from the ground up, Monster 4 made its goal clear. You've never experienced a hunt like this before. By dropping the immersive fantasy hunting simulation aspects and diving headfirst into these are bounty hunting missions, embark into a highly specific location, locate the target, eliminate the target. You aren't a villager supporting a community, you're an elite hunter chosen for elite special operations. This makes Monster 4's experience truly unlike anything that's come before it. What's incredibly important about this whole process is that the guild is not represented as false environmentalists. And instead the guild is presented as simply that, a hunting guild for specialized bounty hunter missions. Through the dramatics of each quest, the specialization of each quest, the activity has become more of a killing job than a hunting job. Despite the vast amount of killing the player will perform throughout the game actually has a less likely chance of making the player question the morality of it, or the legitimacy of it. Your disbelief is suspended better in Monster 4 than it would be in Monster World. In Monster World, its desperate attempts to make you feel one with nature just fall apart. You cannot learn about the environment by killing everything in sight, and of course Monster 4 is not about learning about the environment. It's just mission-based jobs. It's difficult to quantify the difference between these two games without listing damn near every piece of dialogue. I don't really want to do that, it would inflate this video to no end, but I will use an example, and the example is the slaying of the flagship monster. So let's compare slaying Gormagala versus slaying Nergigante. Nergigante is established in lore to be a dragon that hunts and eats other elder dragons when they're close to death. Upon slaying Nergigante, the other elder dragons in the area pick up in frequency because the hunter has killed their natural predator. Their natural predator is defeated. The player hunter then must replace Nergigante as the natural predator and must hunt the other elder dragons. In Monster 4, Gormagala is established in lore to be a dragon that reappears every several generations on a cycle. Gormagala causes extreme ecological chaos for a time being before being naturally destroyed, and the local ecology eventually returns to its previous state before Gor's arrival. We can consider that sort of a normal state, but how do you quantify normal in nature? By the hunter slaying Gormagala, the player is simply acting as the forces of nature, and defeating Gormagala as the forces of nature would normally do in previous cycles. In other words, it is as it was intended to be. So then, when we analyze it that way, Nergigante's defeat may have been unnecessary, and the characters in retrospect maybe realize that too. Gormagala's defeat, however, was inevitable, and speeding up the process was likely way more beneficial for humanity's continued survival. The overall delivery of the content in Monster 4 and Monster World can basically be summed up in that way. In Monster World, is anything the guild doing really necessary or beneficial for humanity's continued survival? And the answer is kinda. Like, learning about the Elder's Crossing is, I guess, interesting for the guild to understand. They have an answer for why the Elder Dragons do what they do. But ultimately, it's not going to change the way the monsters behave, and they certainly don't have the capacity to ever change nature, so what was the point? In Monster Hunter 4, the same question, is anything the guild doing really necessary or beneficial for humanity's continued survival, is given a flat yes for an answer. There's no ifs or buts about it, yeah, just do it. And by presenting that, the game is overall just a better narrative. In Monster Hunter 4, the first two encounters of Gore Magala are because Gore Magala is attacking humans. The people are in danger. In Monster Hunter World, the first two encounters of Nergigante is because Nergigante is defending his food. He doesn't want you to attack his food, and humans are invading his home. Many of the monster hunts in Monster 4 are related to monsters encroaching or attacking the heroes. Zamtrios is literally attacking the felines, Seregios is attacking elite hunters, Rustic Kashella is invading Dondorma, Chaos is battling against Order. It's actually pretty masterfully done, for a 3DS game with no spoken audio dialogue. I could go on, but I think you all get the point. Monster Hunter 4 is doing something that the other games never fully embraced, and it complements and justifies the team moving away from the hunting survival elements the series started with. Look, I can appreciate Monster Hunter 2, and I really love Monster Hunter 2 for doubling down on these survival hunting elements and concepts. I really love it. On the flip side, I really greatly appreciate how Monster Hunter 4 doubles down on it in the opposite direction, and I believe it does it tastefully, and it's really cool and very exciting. It's probably why I consider Monster Hunter 4 to be my favorite. Monster 4 obviously had an impact on the rest of the series from that point on, and some of the special operations design philosophy creeps up in World and Rise from time to time. Overall, though, none of the games that followed truly doubled down on the special ops sort of style that I'm talking about. Instead, they opted to experiment with Monster Hunter Portable genre further. The game to follow Monster Hunter 4 was, of course, Monster Hunter Cross, or Generations as it's called in the West. Monster Hunter Cross was the next slated Monster Hunter Portable title. If Monster Hunter 4 had released on home console, then Monster Hunter Cross may have been named Monster Hunter Portable 4th, who knows. Interestingly, Monster Hunter Cross decided to simply combine the content from Portable 1, 2, and 3 into a single new game. With a bit of new content, of course, there's the new flagships. Overall, it mellowed the experience out again, and it returns to the tried and true format of Portable 3rd. Actually, Monster Hunter Cross is very similar to Portable 3rd if you don't include the new content and the hunting arts and styles. The maps are flat again, the quests are presented and play out as they did in the older titles. A lot of it is just hunt the single monster. There are less variants and subspecies, there's practically none, actually. There's less surprises overall, there's less sieges, there's no narrative, there's no story cutscenes. The closest thing to Monster Hunter 4's quest delivery and design would probably be those special permit quests you do at the end of the game. Monster Hunter Cross is interesting because it also established a fourth definition of Monster Hunter Portable, and that's the Monster Hunter Portable aesthetic. Monster Hunter Portable aesthetic is a more light-hearted side of Monster Hunter, as opposed to the more gritty and grounded aesthetics found in other games. Directly compare Monster Hunter 4 to Monster Hunter Cross, or Monster Hunter World to Monster Hunter Rise. Unpack that for a second. Originally, we had two similar games aesthetically, Monster Hunter and Monster Hunter Portable, but they had different genres. As the Portable team's genre bled into the main team genre, we now had the same genre in both games. You had like Monster Hunter 4 and Monster Hunter Cross. But alongside that, the Portable series had a shift in aesthetic, which helps to keep the Portable series unique. So although they have the same genre now, thematically and aesthetically, they look very different. They feel like very different games. I made a video on the shifting aesthetic. It honestly changes from game to game to fit the desired art direction of the specific games, and that's a whole conversation in of itself. After Monster Hunter Cross, Capcom would release the next slated mainline series title, a theoretical Monster Hunter 5. And so, what did Monster Hunter 5 do? Interestingly, and in my favor, Monster Hunter 5 World decided to experiment and revive an old idea: monster tracking and an immersive world. Oh! It brought back the old-style online servers with scheduled events and bigger lobbies. Wow! Akin to the features seen in Monster Hunter 1, 2, and 3. And because Monster Hunter World focused on mostly new content, hell, Capcom had completely redeveloped all the old assets from the ground up for World. The content delivery overall was more reminiscent of Monster Hunter 1 and Monster Hunter Tri. Elements of the special ops mission-based hunting can be seen in some of the narrative moments the player engages in throughout the story, however, it's nowhere near the same as Monster Hunter 4's quest progression. Monster Hunter World had its own design philosophy and art direction, and if anything, became its own game altogether. Like I said before, each of these games could be debated into having their own distinct genre. I like Monster Hunter World a lot, for the risks it took and the attempts to revive some of the old design concepts of tracking monsters. It doesn't completely dive back in the direction of Monster Hunter 2, but it may yet be a step towards the style of gameplay we saw in Monster Hunter 2 for a future title. Monster Hunter Rise adapts Monster Hunter World's gameplay back to the classic portable titles as faithfully as possible, and the result is Monster Hunter Rise. It's self-explanatory. It's expected that the next title, the theoretical Monster Hunter 6, will be another mainline-styled game, so it'll probably have the mainline aesthetic, and it'll maybe be a bit more like World, but do we really know? The question remains, if it's a portable game in genre, is it gonna be like Monster Hunter 4 again? Or will it continue to experiment with Monster Hunter World's immersive hunting and tracking mechanics? Or will it go back and try to authentically revive the really old, archaic gameplay loops of Monster Hunter 2? Probably not, but who knows? Is it going to continue the mainline series aesthetic? Or will it be the portable series aesthetic? Maybe the portable series aesthetic is going to bleed into the main series, and now the whole Monster Hunter series is going to be all lighthearted, like we see in Cross and Rise. Monster Hunter 6 is just around the corner, and who knows what they have in store. In my Monster Hunter 2 video, I ended with a bunch of ideas for a hypothetical Monster Hunter title, with very ambitious concepts, to refocus the genre back to how it was in Monster Hunter 2. I'm going to end this video similarly, by providing hypothetical ideas for a Monster Hunter title, maybe a Monster Hunter 6, that is more like Monster Hunter 4, or deep diving into what Monster Hunter 4 was trying to do. 1. I think the guild needs to be better established as simply a guild. It's separated from state, it is just a hunting guild. 2. Bring back a traveling caravan. Keep the player hunter moving from location to location and assisting people in their daily troubles. 3. Make the maps more highly specialized locations, not general biome maps. Actually, bring back randomly generated maps. We need to be exploring more ancient ruins too. I would even go as far as to say maybe introduce dungeon crawling elements. I know Frontier did that. Keep it continually fresh. It's not about memorization, it's about specific narrative engagements with these animals. Make every quest an actual request from various NPCs or government states. Show the blights of the various peoples. Show them suffering. Give the player a reason to perform their hunting job. Number 5. The player's job is to hunt. There should be a greater focus on earning money and gaining fame from the public as a master hunter. Bring back monster bounties, and make the NPCs actually create bounties on the monsters. Keep Monster Hunter World's investigation system. It's good, but increase and improve the rewards even further. Make everything continually new and fresh, not grabbing quests off a quest board. Number 7. Make the hunter seem rare in this world. Make the job seem dangerous. Make the NPCs bless the hunter for even arriving to see their troubles. Number 8. Ensure the flagship monster is actually hurting people. See people get physically hurt. Sunbreak did this, which was awesome, so do it again. Overall, if you want to make a game like Monster Hunter 4 again, you gotta ask the player this question. Do you want to work for the hunting guild of Don Dorma? Do you desire fame in the land of the beasts? If the answer is yes, then give them that job. Give them that most dangerous job. Make them a monster hunter. Thank you for watching.
Monster Hunter 6 poop mechanic teaser. Yo, my friends, sorry, I have to keep pausing, otherwise, because like I have to be like super focused. My friends always talk about how what they want, not what they want, what they predict for Monster Hunter 6 is that the monsters will straight up just like call you. The monsters will pull out a phone and they'll tell you where they are on the map. No more tracking.